that has happened at Google before. We launched at least one new feature every day in the fourth quarter of 2011. And there were 90 days in that quarter, and we actually launched 200. So we launched more than one feature every day. So it's just something that we're really excited about at Google, and I think we're going to see this sort of speed, both in terms of users using the platform and the speed at which we launch features. It's just going to keep going in 2012. So I think what I wanted to do is get into some of the ways that people are using Google+. I think when we launched the product a few months ago, we really didn't have any idea how people were going to use it. And I think we've been surprised and very interested by what people are doing. So the first example I want to bring up on the next slide. Oh, we have it up. So Daria Musk, she's sort of like she was someone that nobody knew who she was a few months ago. She's an American, and she's one of these people that was just kind of looking for a break and was hoping to build a music career, but like many young artists, didn't have the exposure. Found a difficult time even getting into a space to perform for just a few people. That would have been great for her. But with Google+, it's really turned her into a star and really changed her life. She had the idea to use Hangouts, so like what we're doing right now with each other. She had the idea to use Hangouts to start playing for an audience. And so she just kind of started one day and started a Hangout and thought she might start playing some music. And for a little while, no one joined, but then someone joined and someone else joined. And she just started playing some of her music with a guitar. And it worked out. And she just kept doing it for hours and hours, and various people would join, and she built a bit of a following. And she now has over 500,000 people who are following her. And she's released an album. She's performing at a variety of live venues, including at Google. Not too long ago, she came out to Mountain View and performed at our headquarters. So it's an example of someone really using the platform in a way that we wouldn't have imagined. I don't think that anyone in Mountain View at our headquarters thought that someone was going to build a music career out of this Hangouts feature. But I think this is the reason we bring up this example is that it's also a really good example of how our users are helping us to develop the product and develop the platform. So when Daria started doing this, there was only the ability for I think 9 people to join the Hangout at once. So people were critical, saying that it doesn't really make sense for you to be doing this. It's not worth your time. You can only have 9 people in this Hangout with you at once. So one of her friends actually had the idea to go and take the Hangout and then live stream it on YouTube, so that as many people could watch it as they wanted to. And that gave us the idea to actually go develop Hangouts on air. So it's a feature that we've used for like the Black Eyed Peas for a concert in the U.S., that we used for a Hangout with President Obama last week, David Beckham, the Muppets. And so we actually got that idea from her. So now you can, with certain brands and celebrities, you can actually watch a Hangout along with 1 million other people if you want. So I think that's a pretty cool example of users really driving our product development. So Robin, if you skip ahead a couple slides, I think we're seeing a lot of really interesting kind of artistic uses. So not only music, but photography, I think, is something that's really happening in a big way on Google+. And this goes back to a theme that I'll touch on a bit, but the theme is that people are using Google+ as a content discovery tool. And I think, you might ask, how are people using Google+ differently from Facebook or Twitter or another social network? I think it's a really good way to discover interesting people and interesting content in a way that's maybe not so easy in other places. So photography is an example. Trey Ratcliffe was already a famous photo blogger and big on Facebook, but he saw that Google+ would allow him to engage with people who are interested in his work more deeply through Hangouts and through more rich an ability to kind of display images in a richer way. He used Hangouts to have a sort of a question and answer session about some of the work that he does, and he's now got over 860,000 followers, and you can see how fast that's growing. Mm-hmm. So I'll just go through a couple other examples. It's not just about artists; it's also a bit about business, and not just the biggest businesses. There's this place called the Meatball Shop in New York City, and they won an award from Zagat, which is an American kind of brand that rates restaurants. They were rated the best foodie page, and they did a really good job of posting really cool photos and updates, photos of their food, photos of their customers. So small businesses are really getting engaged with Google Plus as well. Another example, if you go to the next slide, I think this is something, it's an example of a way to use Google Plus that you really can't do with any other tool on the web. This woman, Danielle Herman, has been holding yoga lessons via a Hangout from her living room. And so I think, she does this kind of on the side, and she thought it might be cool to do yoga with other people across the world. And she just starts a Hangout and starts doing a yoga class, and other people can join. And I think this is a good example. This is something that, if you think about other social tools, it's not really easy to do this. You have to be able to build a following, push information into someone's newsfeed, and then to actually have a live video interaction with them. That's something that's, I think, very unique to Google Plus and very cool. I'm skip ahead to slide 12. Charities, I think, is an interesting case and something that hits close to home in Thailand. We're seeing charities use Google Plus, and particularly the Hangouts feature, to reach donors and to kind of turn something that's maybe more abstract into something that people really understand emotionally. So in Thailand, there were an NGO held Hangouts to show donors what was happening with the floods, and got a nice contribution to that fund. And then in Japan as well, famous musician Ryuichi Sakamoto held a Hangout with children that were affected in the northern part of Japan from the tsunami to raise funds. And if you think about, again, why did Sakamoto, why did the NGO in Thailand use Google Plus? I think if you think about charities in particular, it's very difficult for people to visualize what's actually happening in these places. You understand that there's floods happening. You understand that thousands and thousands of people were killed in Japan from this disaster. But to be able to actually show what's happening with people, to actually show the emotions in video that you can do with Hangouts, I think is something that's really powerful for charity and really makes people want to donate. So I think that's pretty interesting. Just blowing through some more examples. If we go to the slide about tech news, Malaysia's amans.my has been hosting Hangouts to live stream events. So they're kind of like a tech publication in Malaysia. I think that's pretty interesting. Next slide, just various other global events that have happened. If you think about, again, going back to that Discovery example, we're seeing the Google Plus Unofficial Film Festival. So a bunch of filmmakers use Google Plus to bring out a bunch of not short films, but independent films that didn't really see the light of day at film festivals or at any of the other places we might find these films. They decided to kind of just put it out on the web via Google Plus. You got a pretty significant following from there. Also, this Wine Week example, you could actually have a hangout with wineries. This happened in Australia. The only downside to that would be that I guess you can't really drink their wine, so it's kind of a tease to be participating in a wine tasting where you can't actually taste it. So maybe that'll be in the next feature we launch, the ability to drink wine through Google Plus. We'll see. So these are some of the kind of like organic grassroots examples that we've seen, but there's also a lot of the familiar celebrities, brands, really politicians that are using the platform. So Hugh Jackman is really, really popular, and he basically just posts photos of him every day, just really, really good. So if you want to think about a good strategy for a celebrity to use Google Plus, they could just post photos of themselves looking really good. And it's also an interesting example of people asking how they should use social media. He's just picked a very particular focus. Like, I'm just going to put up good photos of me. I'm not going to talk about what I'm eating for lunch or the next movie I'm going to be in. I'm just going to post photos. So it's kind of funny, and I think this is pretty popular with Googlers. Sports is also an example, not just U.S. sports, but if you look at soccer or football, whatever you call it, a lot of these teams, from teams in Europe to teams in Asia, David Beckham, who we had a hangout with at Google a couple weeks ago, they're on there in a big way. And also cricket, a lot of the big teams in India and across Asia are on there as well. So it extends from actors to sports to others. And you can see here a slide about the hangout that we had with David Beckham out of San Francisco, where tens of thousands of people watched that. It's also a space for expert discussion. So a bunch of space people who write about space, who are academics in the field, who aren't normally being discussed or not normally being featured on the most popular television of the day, are finding ways to reach people that are interested through Hangouts on air. So they're getting around 10,000 people watching each of their weekly space Hangouts. I think that's pretty cool because it's the sort of thing where there's not really a space channel where you can go on TV where you can go and watch these people, and there's probably things that are less edifying or less good for our intelligence that are on TV, but they're kind of using Google Plus as a way to break through and reach people that are interested. So I think that's pretty cool. And not only space journalists and academics, but Hangouts on air have been used for conversation between Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu when the Dalai Lama was not able to get a visa to join Desmond Tutu in person. They organized a Hangout, which was a very powerful demonstration of the power of technology. And then the Muppets, Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy, used a Hangout to launch their new movie, which launched a couple months ago. So you can see the variety, and not only them, but again, President Obama, who had a Hangout after his U.S. Congress State of the Union address last week. So it's a pretty powerful platform. You're probably familiar with Twitter. A couple years ago when Ashton Kutcher and Anderson Cooper, who's a U.S. media celebrity, when they were in a big battle to see who would get to 1 million Twitter followers first. The big battle on Google Plus is between Britney Spears and Snoop Dogg. So they're both now well over 1 million followers, but they're kind of the top two players in terms of big celebrities on Google Plus right now. So kind of different audiences for those two, but pretty interesting. If you're interested in the news part, I don't know, whether your organization is thinking about using this, but we're seeing big media brands like New York Times is very popular on Google Plus, Newsweek, Time, BBC, many of the global media brands. And if you look at the next slide, you can see that in terms of engagement, there's a tool where you can actually go and see how media brands and various other brands, not just media, are using Google Plus and what their engagement levels are. You can see that New York Times sort of ranks at the top of these media brands in terms of user engagement. And I think they do a good job of posting really interesting articles and asking users questions and not just kind of using it as a one-way method of discussion, but more as a two-way method as well.
Yeah.
And if you want to talk about Asia in particular, Apple Daily out of Taiwan is one of the biggest news media on Google Plus in Asia. So if you want a local example, you could go take a look at their page. I think brands are also a big way that people actually want to hear from brands on Google Plus, and I think that they're engaging with them quite strongly. Toyota and Sony are a couple of the brands that I work with out of Japan. They actually both now have over. Toyota has actually both of them as of today now have more than 250,000 followers on Google Plus, which is just huge, and they're both very very happy about that. They're both. I think it's interesting because they're Japanese companies, but they're trying to reach a global audience, and Google Plus is very good for that. And also Uniqlo, which is an upstart clothing brand out of Japan, has over 200,000 followers. So it's just an example of people really wanting to, engage with more than just friends on Google Plus, but also communicate with brands and celebrities, etc. I'm not sure if you're familiar with AKB48. I think they might be popular in Thailand. But AKB48 is this girl pop band based out of Japan. They all came onto the platform, over 100 of them. It's a huge group. They all came onto the platform in Japan a couple months ago, and we're just seeing a lot of excitement in Japan, a lot of engagement from users about this. And the girls are posting all sorts of things that they're doing all day, but also have had a series of concerts on Google Plus as well. So I think that's pretty cool. And just to compare the Japan example, if you want to talk about, how is Asia taking up Google Plus versus the US? If you look at this, if you count up the total followers for all these AKB48 girls, they actually kind of exceed Britney Spears. So, and you can see this, that the engagement levels for Yuko Oshima, who's one of the most popular members of AKB48, she's actually on various ways that you score it in terms of +1s on her comments and sharing of her posts. She's actually competing quite well with Britney Spears. Just to kind of move into the last parts of the examples, politics and